How's everybody this morning? Oh man, such a beautiful weather week, am I right? Felt like fall. How's everybody doing with the mosquito population at your house? Raise your hand if you've got the most. I guarantee you do.
You got a lot of water out
We got a lot of water. I dragged some branches back into the forest. Don't tell the government, and I was like, just drag them back there real quick, drop them and run. And I couldn't get the chain off of them, and it literally was like, I was just trying to move, and it was crazy. It's like, yeah, swarmed. They almost carried me off. It was wild. I came back, I was so mad. And it was right before I was gonna study on the porch, and I having a cigar and my Bible sitting out there, and I came back just like, oh my gosh, who are these things? Like if
they're not as bad
they are so devil. I know. If you don't believe in God, you can at least believe in the devil after mosquitoes. Like, you have to have some sort of spiritual awareness right now. They are more than just an insect, people. I'm telling you right now. Holy cow. Goodness. Well, good morning, man. I'm so excited about today. If you haven't already figured that out, I read this chapter 17 in Acts, which is where we are. And if you're first time with us, or you just need to catch up real quick, we've been going through the book of Acts for a long time, and the book of Acts is a record. I mean, it is a book of its own. It is an epic tale of several years in the Bible of the Holy Spirit, God's Spirit, acting through his disciples, getting work done. Like, at the end of the day, there's this story of Jesus, died and rose again on the cross to give us that freedom from shame, freedom from living in shame and in chains. And here the disciples are spreading that word, and there's been so many epic tales of them, getting caught, getting beaten, getting imprisoned, being let go, preaching 5 minutes later in the same place. They were just crazy. But here we are in chapter 17, and we're right in the middle of really Paul's story of spreading the gospel. He's a missionary at this point. Sometimes when we think about Paul, if we grew up in different church type of places, it's like he's kind of stuck in stained glass, and he's probably got a little halo around his head, and he's a saint, and he's untouchable, and all these different things. And I urge you that if that's your thought, when I say the word the Apostle Paul, if that's your thought, if you just go, man, somebody I could never be, or somebody of a different age, or man, that guy was otherworldly, I can definitely say go back and read this second half of the book of Acts and just get an idea of who the guy was. Read it like a comic book and just go, oh my gosh, this guy was something else. And this is one of those chapters. This is about halfway through he had 3 real missionary journeys, and this is about halfway through one of those the second journey, and he is going through a couple of different towns, and it's pretty wild. The last chapter, if you weren't here last week, he was jailed, and there was an earthquake, and all of the chains fell off of all the guys in prison, and the jailer woke up and freaked out, and he was like, oh my gosh, they're going to torture me and kill me, the government, so I'm just going to kill myself before I get in trouble for all these hostages, all these prisoners escaping. And they were all still there. And Paul's like, don't kill yourself, we're all still here. And that was enough for the jailer to go, who are you? Why is everybody still here? And it said the word that really popped out last week was this word believe. And it wasn't just this casual belief. It was, they believed in God. They believed in what happened. They believed in the power of God. And we had a definition of believe last week, and it was entrusting, your spiritual well-being to somebody. That's big. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of options for your spiritual well-being these days. You just look anywhere. I mean, you scroll through Instagram, get the wrong algorithm, and all of a sudden you are 14 different religions and are following all these different things. And I mean, they could be some really wise sayings. Honestly, there's a lot of really good information out there. But over time, we can be entrusting our spiritual well-being to a different God. And that word believe is just not a small word. And I believe a lot of us have grown up going, hey, you just believe in God and that's it. And that's not it. What's the word believe mean? Our language is so important. And I think if you're younger in the room, I think one way I would put it, is, and older, which, I'd be in the younger category, but if you're older like some of you guys, it's, that word love can be part of that. Growing up, you're in love. You love someone, or they love you, and then you find out it didn't feel like love. And then over time, you start to learn what the word love actually means. And that's a growing process for all of us. Like there's in love, there's loving somebody like a brother, there's thinking you're in love when really it's lust, you're just attracted to somebody, and that's fine too. I've said it before, but the longer and longer and longer Kelly and I are married, it's like I start to go, I think I'm starting to figure out what love is. And I've been in love with her since I was 10 years old, but I'm figuring out more and more and more, like a little bit more of like, that's what love is. That's what it feels like. That's how it acts. That's how it treats. That's how it puts itself aside. That's how it knows when it's wrong. And, there's a lot to that. So believe, I think, is just as deep of a word. It's just this deep word of you just can't go, I believe in God. Oh, okay. How come? Well, this is church, man. They told me, like, if I don't believe in God, believe Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead and all that stuff, like I'm going to hell. Gotcha. So what do you believe about God? Well, that he kind of created the space and everything. Well, what do you believe about him? What are you talking about? Oh, there's so much more. You got the rest of your life to figure this out. So that was that chapter 16. And then we're rolling into chapter 17 in the book of Acts. Why don't you flip to it if you can? There's something about having the Bible in your hand. I know it's going to be on the screen, but there is something to reading. It's almost like God knew how to make us. It's better to write notes with pen. It's better to read word on page. So here we are. Paul had left another place. If you've been following along, he keeps preaching, which is, the word preach just means emphatically sharing this story of Jesus. There's not only one preacher in the room. There had better be like 30, 40, 50 preachers in the room. Like, our thing is to finally believe, our eyes opened, and then we go, I got to tell somebody. Like, that's kind of the evolution of meeting Jesus, by the way. And so he's been preaching in different places, and he keeps getting run out. And he literally just left prison, this jailer. And then they said, you better leave town right now. And he was like, absolutely. And then he went and visited some people for a little bit in town, getting a picture of who Paul was, and then left. He departed. In verse 1 of chapter 17, now when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews, and Paul went in as was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures. So see right away, he goes right to where? He goes right to church. Like his custom was, I go to church. Like I go to the place to worship, and I go there, and I want to talk. I want to talk with these people, and I want to reason with them. He did it 3 Sundays in a row, so we get the picture of him being there for about 3 weeks. And it was his custom. So I think a lot of times we take a person like Paul, or maybe if you're, looking at somebody that's in the health industry or the beauty industry or the music industry or whatever else, and you want to be like them, so you start to kind of imitate, how they sing or how they work out or whatever. But do you ever think to yourself, like, what made them that person? Because if you look at this, you would go, okay, and Paul went into the synagogue as was his custom. That was part of who he was. Like part of his custom was, I am going to go in here and learn and teach and talk and get to figure a little bit more out about life and about God and about all these things over and over again. Part of his custom was to go to a community of people that was having a discussion about God. That was part of his custom. And then part of his custom in his missionary journeys was to start in the synagogue. It was to start at churches. So he started with the Jews that were born Jews, and started with the Greeks that had become Jews. So you'll see Jews and then you'll see Greeks in here. Greeks were, in this setting, were people that had chosen the Jewish faith. So he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead, and saying, this Jesus whom I proclaim to you is the Christ. Now, it doesn't say that he went in there and he spouted off, and he got belligerent, and he got angry, and it says explaining and proving. He reasoned, explained, and proved. He proved that it was necessary, and he used the Scriptures. See, it says from the Scriptures. So he's literally going back to the Old Testament, so to speak, and he's pointing out these prophets. And he's going, guys, listen, like this part right here where it says this, and somebody will be born, and they're going to be, like all this stuff, like this is him. And when it says the Christ, don't just think, well, yeah, his name was Jesus Christ. Christ meant Messiah. Like all of these people are living this life trying to obey all of these rules, trying to find hope, find peace, find freedom, get healed from different things in their everyday life. And he's going, guys, he's already here. Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah is already here. So he's trying to reason with them. He's trying to tell them. He's using proof and explaining that to them. And it says, and some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a great many of the devout Greeks, right? And not a few of the leading women, which means a lot of the leading women got it. Some of them didn't. But so it's saying here that he was explaining, proving, reasoning with them, with the Scriptures, in the synagogue, and there was a place for that. It's not like he just burst in the back doors and started. It was part of their custom, was to actually work through things, imagine that, not just listen to one guy talk, and go through that stuff. And so some of them persuaded and joined him, as did a great many of the Greeks, but not a few of the leading women, meaning a lot of the leading women, not just a few of them. And I would say full stop right there, women, you are a giant part of the story of Jesus getting known throughout the world. And I don't just mean teaching your kids at home or kids in the back room. Not a few of the women were persuaded. They were there. They were in the conversation. They left there going, oh my gosh, I am not blind anymore. I now see. I get it. The guy I've heard about for the last 15, 20 years, I get it now. He reasoned, he explained, and proved, and my eyes are open. I now believe in Jesus. Please hear that. Verse 5, but the Jews were jealous. Here we go again. And taking some wicked men of the rabble, which kind of means mob, they formed a mob, set the city in an uproar, and attacked the house of Jason, seeking to bring them out to the crowd. And when they could not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the brothers before the city authorities, shouting, these men who have turned the world upside down have come here also, and Jason has received them. And they are all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus. And the people in the city authorities were disturbed when they heard these things. And when they had taken money as security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. So they go to Jason's house. Paul and Silas are not there. And so they arrest Jason. They question him. He's like, I don't know where they're at. They let Jason go after he left security, which is like when you're in jail, somebody comes and gets you. What is that called? What's that? Bail. Okay, Eddie knows what it is. Bail. I think you said it too, so we're going to talk about that later. Okay. Whoops, exactly. But look at this beautiful verse. I want this on my tombstone. These men who have turned the world upside down. A couple years ago, we were in a conversation that was like, we just got to do this thing. How can we do this different? How can we do this thing upside down? How do we do church different or live out a Christian faith different is really that conversation. It's not just how do we make a place that everybody wants to spend 48 minutes in and check it off for the week. No, it's like how do we press into this? How do we believe and get to know? How do we bring people into a place that's welcoming to them and they see that it's not just, oh yeah, I believe in God, but it's, I know him, and I know Jesus, and I want to do, the main thing I want to do with my life is to get to know him better and better and better and better and better and better. It's the main thing in my life. Yes, I have a job. Yes, I'm married, and that's, that takes a lot to getting used to, and yes, I've got kids now, and they've got sports, and they've got this, but like the main thing is, like the overarching thing in all of those things is never trumped by those things. That I just want everything to lead me back to Jesus. I would say this, it's hard to figure out and discern things in our world. It always has been, but I feel like it's really hard now. if there's anything in your life that's leading you away from Jesus or away from healthy relationships with people or both, you should probably get rid of it. You should at least question it. You should at least look at it and go, is this leading me closer to Jesus and people or further away? It's probably not a good thing. And the things that are leading you closer to Jesus and closer to people and community with people are probably God's design, because that was his design to begin with. But this beautiful, absolutely beautiful verse, these men who have turned the world upside down, and where did that come from? It came from Jesus Christ, a Savior that came into this world and turned the whole thing upside down. And his turning it upside down wasn't turning something that was right side up, wrong side down. It was him coming into this earth going, this whole thing's upside down. We need to turn it right side up. So when these people say, these men who have turned the world upside down, you honestly could look at that and go, you mean the guys that are trying to turn it right side up? Like if you had been watching and you were had a little bit of a sarcastic attitude like me, like I would have been like, you got it wrong. It's the other way around. What? Did you say something? Yeah, I totally did. You want to talk about it? Because that's what they were doing, because Jesus came into this world and he didn't power over. And he didn't wag his finger. And he didn't say, you're ashamed. Think about the woman at the well. If you don't remember the story, Google it, go look it up, read it, and then read some notes about it. Some people that are smarter than us that then put a commentary together to explain it. It's kind of like watching a movie with somebody that gets it, and then afterwards you're like, what? Where did you get all that from? Some people see things we don't see. That's why you have community, and you talk about different things. But the woman at the well, that story is amazing. How about the woman that was caught in adultery, and all of the Pharisees, they drag her out, and they drag her to Jesus. It was just a trap for Jesus. They didn't care about her. It was a trap for Jesus. They wanted Jesus to be entrapped into this, so they had a reason to crucify him. So they bring this adulterous woman out, and you know the right thing to do is just stone him, right? And so they bring her out, and she's not even clothed, and they talk about what she did and what happens. He says, what? Yeah, we should stone her. Oh, we need to bring her to court. Oh, we need to. He just said, hey, well, I tell you what, whoever without sin in here can cast the first stone. He wrote something on the ground, right? What was he writing on the ground? I don't know. Their sins. The Pharisees' sins, that's my guess. It says that they left one by one, starting with the what? The oldest. Why do you think that is? I'd say he had the longest list of sins. I mean, I know I do the older I get. Perhaps he started with the older guys. I don't even know. But he wrote it in sand. He didn't write it in concrete. Because even they deserve his grace and forgiveness. Because, bless you, an hour later, that sand, the wind had blown, and their sins were gone too. Think of how Jesus came in and turned everything upside down. Everything was turned upside down. So here are these Pharisees that drag Jason out of his house and go, Paul and Silas, they were staying with Jason. He's got something to do with it. The guys that are turning this whole thing upside down, they're just making a mess of everything. He was staying with them. I want to be known as people that have turned the world upside down. I want people to look at us and go, they messed everything up for me, but it saved my life, and it gave me peace, and it gave me hope, and it gave me freedom, and I figured out who I was away from who I was trying to be. See, when the world was right side up for me, I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't, and then when they came into my life and messed it all up and turned it actually right side up, I realized who God had made me. And it wasn't the person I had been trying to be for 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. Maybe that's some of y'all's story. I know that's part of mine. Big time. And so, they posted bail and let them go. The brothers immediately, in verse 10, the brothers immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night. See, over and over again, they're like, all right, you guys are like hot. We got to get you out of this town. So they sent them away. It was about 40 or so miles away to a town called Berea. They sent them away by night to Berea, and when they arrived, they went into the Jewish synagogue. They went right back for it. Paul's custom was, we're going to start with the people in the church, and then we'll move on. He did it over and over again. You can see this pattern. Like, he did his best to talk to people that at least believed in God, hoping that they would believe that the words God wrote in the Old Testament had come true. It seems like a natural progression, and some believed. And it says, hold on, get my iPad open there. I have one note I want to go through with this. There it is. Now these Jews were more noble than those in Thessalonica. They received the word with all eagerness. Isn't it nice when you tell somebody something, bless you, and they're just like, oh man, tell me more? Doesn't that feel really good? I mean, name the setting, it doesn't even matter. When you're trying to teach somebody at work or when you're trying to talk to your kids or whatever the thing is, they received the word with all eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Many of them therefore believed, with not a few Greek women of high standing as well as men. There's the women again. Hear that, ladies. We need you. This world needs you out there telling the story of Jesus through what he's done in your life, and it's really hard to tell it if you haven't received what he wants to do in your life. I don't know about you, but if I'm just paid money to sell something, whatever. But if it's something I believe in, you're going to hear about it. And that's part of my personality. Doesn't mean everybody needs to be like enthusiastic, busting doors down, selling things. But it's part of all of our personalities to go, gosh, this thing worked. I got to tell somebody. They received the word with all eagerness, but look what they did next, right? They examined the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Many of them therefore believed, with not a few Greek women of high standing as well as men. But when the Jews from Thessalonica learned that the word of God was proclaimed by Paul of Berea also, they came there too. So these Jews are just like, hey, we got to roll. We're about 45 miles away. We'll be there in a couple days, and we're going to, take Paul out. Agitating and stirring up the crowds, then the brothers immediately sent Paul off on his way to the sea, but Silas and Timothy remained there. Those who conducted Paul, which means kind of led him, Paul brought him as far as Athens, and after receiving a command for Silas and Timothy to come to him as soon as possible, they departed. So they bring Paul to Athens, and then they go back for Paul and Silas. These were the tour guides getting them there. Back to this little town called Berea. Don't skip over this. This is why I think it's so important. Listen, if I just started doing this 20 years ago, if you just stop a little bit and go, I wonder what Berea is known for. I mean, Kelly and I are going away this next weekend, and we're going to a place kind of never been before, and I've a couple times gone, I wonder what that place is known for. I want to know before I get there. I don't want to know after we're home, because then I'm like, oh, man, should have, what? Right? I mean, you do it when you travel. Why don't you do it when you read the Bible? There's this thing, the Bereans were known for something. Did you catch it? They didn't just go, what? That's amazing. Oh my gosh. What does it say they did? Examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Man, they didn't just take some excited guy's word for it. And Paul was probably pretty convincing. Like, he was smart. This guy was a chief of Pharisees. Like, he had grown up as a little kid in the Jewish faith. There's a famous rabbi, one of the most famous rabbis back then, named Gamaliel, if I'm pronouncing it right. That was his teacher. Like, he would have been taught so much. And being a student of a rabbi wasn't like Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. class. It was like you slept in the same room. You took trips with him. You walked everywhere with him. The closer you got to him, the more you could hear him talking about. When rabbis moved around, there was usually a crowd of people that he was discipling, and they were all having conversations going, Rabbi, what do you think about this? We've lost the art of apprenticeship everywhere in this world. This is how they apprenticed back then. So Paul is smart. He would be somebody that you would listen to, and in modern day age, take his word for it, which can be so dangerous. Look at all of the headlines of different people that we've set up as celebrity leaders in the church and outside of the church, and then later you learn, well, they didn't actually know what they were talking about. So where do we find truth? You find truth here. That's why this is so important, because we can go back to this and go, I don't know if that's exactly right. And then you can go to that person that's teaching and go, hey, just real quick question. I'm confused because you said this, but this says this. As a teacher, I would appreciate that, because there are times when I'm zooming through something and I could say something wrong and you could hear it wrong. And guess what the beauty of that is? Now we're in conversation about it. It's not an offense. If I take it offensive and I cast you out of the church, you should probably find somewhere else to be. And I should not be in my position. But out of this culture of people, you've got to look at this little town, like see it on a hillside or something, 40 miles from where he was from, and just go, what's different about that town? Was it the meals? Was it the culture? What were they into? Well, there's such a thing called the Berean spirit that came out of it. The Berean spirit. Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom were the three things that they kind of were after, right? So knowledge is data or truth from God's revelation, including obviously the Bible. Understanding is insight into that knowledge, which is enlightenment, understanding the knowledge you just got. So you've got data, and then you've got understanding the data, and then you've got wisdom. Wisdom is the application of what you know and understand. And they had the fear of the Lord. A couple different verses I forgot to put in. Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs 1:11-10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. They had a fear of the Lord. This guy was great. This was the Paul that came into town. But they had a greater fear, a greater awe of somebody, and that was who? That was of God. So the foundation for them learning from Paul was this Berean spirit to check everything against the truth. See, that could just be left back in that chapter and you could never see that again. But I would encourage you, man, when we go through this stuff, take a little bit of time and go, man, you know what? I'm going to go read the Cliff Notes on that episode of Acts that we just talked about. And then Paul ends up in a town called Athens. Anybody ever heard of Athens? Anybody ever been there? I thought you guys, right? I thought you guys had been there pretty. How was it? Crowded and busy. I think it's been that way, except there was a short time in history where nobody was there. But what would you say we are known for? Charleston. Crowded and busy. All right. Mosquitoes. All right. Food. Very good. What else? Hospitality. Churches. Very true. Beaches. Shopping. Golf. What else? Hospitality. What else? Hey, let's take the filter off. I know it's church, but what's that? Medical. Very true. Taking care of people is part of that. And then the medical industry is the other part of it, right? What else? What other things would you say we're known for? A lot of history. Very true. What's important to us? Family. And maybe go a layer out from your own set of beliefs and just look at the town of Charleston. If you were to look at it from afar, almost if you were going to judge it, what would you say is most important to Charleston? Image. What else? Ocean. Yeah, the ocean. Living by the ocean, for sure. What else? Preserving history. Hanging on, okay. Anything else? What we value here as a culture? Our ancestors. So picture this, you are Paul, you just went away from Berea, you go right to the ocean, and they bring you down to Athens as fast as they can so that you are not being chased anymore. And you end up in this town called Athens. And if you know anything about Athens, this is another one, like go just read about it. It's fascinating. It'll never end, quite honestly. It just keeps going and going and going. But you're in this little town called Athens, about 10,000 people at that time. And it is quite the enlightened place. Like the number of philosophers and thought leaders and industries that came out of this place or were in this place at that time, you would have walked in it and kind of gone, oh my gosh, like this place is happening. It's busy and crowded. This was said by a guy named Dr. Jack Arnold. I think I have this in there, Shelley. The slide's a little funky because it got, I don't know, the letters were transposed. That's the one. This is what he said. It would be somewhat frightening experience to sit across from these Harvard and Yale professors who are existentialists, atheistic evolutionists, materialists, determinists, and relativists committed to the new morality. Yet this is exactly what Paul faced in his day at Athens. Athens was the university seat of the world. Think about that. This city had fostered great philosophers such as, I'll do my best, Pericles, Demosthenes, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Sophocles, and Euripides. These famous humanistic philosophers taught patterns of human thought which affected philosophers in Paul's day and still affect philosophers today. Now, a lot of those lived 500 years before this, but Athens was built on how they thought. In fact, almost all modern-day philosophies follow, in some degree, the teachings of these ancient philosophers. Humanistic philosophy has not changed much in 3,000 years. Philosophers come and go, and philosophies change their names, labels, and terms, but the philosophies of Paul's day are essentially the same humanistic philosophies of our day. What Paul told these first-century philosophers is the same thing we must tell the 20th century philosophers today. As you start to read about Athens, and if you just scale back out of Charleston and you start to be a little bit honest about what's keeping our minds busy in present day, Charleston, United States, New York City, you name it, right? I think you'll see some similarities. Now, while Paul was, this is verse 16, now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, he was waiting for his buddies to get there, right? Silas and Timothy. But while he was waiting, his spirit was provoked. His own soul, his own gut was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. Now, he's walking around. He's probably thinking, I got a couple days to kill. This will be awesome before the boys get here. But his soul was provoked seeing all of the idols, walking around and seeing all the things that people worshipped. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Now, the marketplace was a place where there are stages, if you will, set up for people to just give their thoughts on life and to have those conversations. So it wasn't odd. He wasn't just necessarily, going by like, the grocery store person at the register saying things. This was a place for this type of conversation. But here he is, not only in the synagogue, but he's also going to the marketplace. Like, he is passionate about this. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him. Now, just to stop on that, Epicurean and Stoic, real quick here. So much information in this chapter, probably is like a 3-month study, but I want to do it in one day or 1 hour. Epicureanism, an ancient Greek philosophy of life, can be applied to modern life in many ways. Some say that Epicurean ideas are relevant today because they emphasize moderation, minimalism, and a balanced approach to life. Sounds good. It's not all bad. Couple headlines: find joy in simple pleasures. Yeah, gratitude, that's good. Reject destructive desires. That's good as well. Face mortality without fear. All right, cultivate tranquility. Not all bad things. Not all bad things. And then Stoicism. Modern Stoicism is a practical philosophy that aims to help people live well by minimizing negative emotions and maximizing gratitude and joy. So these were decent strategies at life. If he would have been sitting with Jesus, he would have said some of the same things, right? Set your heart on things above, not on things of this earth. I mean, there were a lot of the same type of conversations, but they had made what out of them? Gods. So these philosophers conversed with him, and some said, what does this babbler wish to say? A babbler would have been a bird like picking around for seeds on the ground. They're just saying, every once in a while you say something smart. What does this babbler wish to say? Others said, he seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this is, this new teaching is that you're presenting. They were very curious people. They were at least want to know, hey, what's this new thing? They wanted new ideas and new thoughts. They wanted to grow in their understanding of themselves and the earth, which was their religion. Sound familiar? There's so much right now we just need to understand. We just need to understand why I'm here. We need to understand why that person said this to me or why they didn't say this to me, why I didn't get picked for this, why my life ended up this way, why it's not as half full as it is half empty, so many different things. They were the same type of mindset, which is, I need to understand more. Hey, here's a guy with some new insight. I think I want to listen to him a little bit. May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting, for you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean. Now, all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. There's nothing new, guys. All the people that lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. This was said by a guy named Adam Clark. I'm not going to tell you when or where just yet. He described the situation of his day, and it sounds like it is even truer of our own time. Here's what he said. This is a striking feature of the city of blank, I'll let you know in a minute, in the present day. The itch for news, which generally argues a worldly, shallow, or unsettled mind, is wonderfully prevalent. It's everywhere. Even ministers of the gospel, negligent of their sacred function, are become in this sense Athenians. So that the book of God is neither read nor studied with half of the avidity, eagerness, or enthusiasm, and spirit as a newspaper. It's no wonder if such become political preachers and their sermons be no better than husks for swine. Obviously, husks don't do swine any good. To such, the hungry sheep look up and are not fed. Sounds like today. Just looking for something new to say, adjusting everything to be politically correct, shallow, generally arguing something worldly. This was in about 1830 in the city of London. So we're not up against anything that hasn't been seen, but we do have to realize that we are up against something. I believe we're up against just living a life that's just kind of good enough. Like we're in a first world country. We all do pretty well for ourselves, even when we're not doing well at all and we're stressed about our mortgage. At the end of the day, we're doing pretty dang good compared to most of the world. We wake up every day and barely need God, quote unquote. I don't mean that really, but as a thought in our head. There's no desperation. We don't wake up realizing we're blind because we can see and we can order Chick-fil-A to our door and we can get a Starbucks, sometimes late and too much cream. They better get it right next time. It's wild, isn't it? So Paul addresses them. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, says, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, 'To the unknown God.' What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. I say this to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything." Humbling. These were the smartest people potentially in the world. The most enlightened. They had thought through every minute of life and what it meant and why flowers grow. I mean, everything. And he's literally saying, God made everything. He even gave you the breath in your lungs right now. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live, Jesus, on all the face of the earth, Adam, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should, listen, this is unbelievable. He made from one man every nation. We're all made from one man of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries. He knew when we'd live and where we'd live and what we'd go through and what job we'd have and what troubles we'd have and all these different things. He knew all of it. Sometimes you think you're in the exact wrong place in the world and God's just going, I want you to wake up, you're exactly where I want you, which is the exact right place in the world. And the longer you sit there and think you're in the wrong place in the world, you're just going to be on pause. Like your eyes aren't open yet. And then it says that why? That they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he's not actually far from each one of us. What a beautiful thought of just the human experience of life. That we would finally accept the fact that we were born into this family. We have this job or this place or these heartaches or these joys or these possessions we don't have or whatever the trial or joy of the day is, and just go, this whole thing is meant that perhaps I would feel my way toward him and find him. Everything that happens every day, good or bad, would be part of me feeling my way through life. Now, why would you feel your way through life? You ever gotten up in the middle of the night and the power's out? What do you typically do? You either feel your way with your hand or your toe. Which is better, right? Who feels their way through a dark room? I don't know about you. When my eyes are open, I'm not feeling my way through anything. It's fascinating, isn't it? That perhaps they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Who in here is feeling their way through life, trying to find him? And if that's right where you are, just be right there. This is not a gathering of Christians that go, you haven't arrived yet? Because I know most all of you, and none of us have arrived yet. Some of us have found Jesus, like profoundly found him, and we're like, there you are. I can see you. Some of us are going, I don't know just yet. Like, I believe that he lived, and I believe in this, but like to surrender my whole life to him, to put the vitality and the well-being of my soul in his hands, I don't know. I got to hang on to some things. I pray that we are perhaps feeling our way toward him and finding him. And here's the cool part. No matter how long and far you felt your way through life, he's actually not far from each one of us. I've never found him more than like a half step behind me at all times. It's like, I should probably, dear God, why are you right there? Oh my gosh, you're so close. It just took me actually surrendering my direction and looking for him. He's never far. He's always right there. For in him we live and move and have our being. That's not just a poetic line. In him we live and move and have our being. And guess what? This line comes from a philosopher from that town that lived 650 years before this. He knew what he was doing. Paul literally brought up a poetic line from a philosopher 650 years ago that had helped save this town through his prophecy. It's a fascinating story that's bizarre. And even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed his offspring. So being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of man. The times of ignorance, God overlooked. When you were ignorant to who he was and how he was calling you and all those things, he's overlooked all that. But now he commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed, Jesus. And of this he has given assurance to all by raising him from the dead. So he's giving them these facts. He took them back to the beginning of the earth. God created everything, even the breath that you're breathing. All of us are doing our best to feel our way toward him. Of course, we know many people find something different along the way. And some people stop there and they never find him. But if you think about it, everything we do in life is just this little bit of like, we're looking for hope, or we're looking for security, or we're looking for identity, or we're looking for purpose, or we're looking to be saved by somebody by telling them our worst, latest story so that they go, oh my goodness, you poor thing. We're looking to be saved at all times, and we're looking for something to worship at all times. We're feeling our way through life seeking what? A God to worship and a God to save us. Now, when they had heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, we will hear you again about this. So Paul went out of their midst, but some men joined him and believed, among whom were also were Dionysius the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. Some believed, some didn't. Some chose a path to keep enlightening themselves for the rest of their lives and figuring out life and worshiping all of these different idols that made them feel good, because things out there can give us pleasure. You guys can come up. Things like out there can give us pleasure, but they will never give us happiness. Have you ever noticed that things in life, idols that we have, they can be very pleasurable. They can give us short-term pleasure, but in the end, you just need more and more and more. You're never actually sitting and resting in happiness. Jesus came to this life to save. He didn't come to this life to condemn. He came here to be that payment for us so we don't sit in our shame, so that we don't sit in our grief, so we don't sit in our anxious places. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating chapter. I urge you to go and read it and dig into it and study it. And instead of feeling your way through life, hoping that all the worldly things that we have access to somehow accidentally lead us to God because we're happier, that you would go, hey, let me put a little direction, a little bit of target on this feeling my way through life, and open up the Bible. Open up a conversation with each other. Text me. Hey, I don't understand anything about Sunday. Excellent. Let's talk about it. I had somebody open up the other day and they were like, honestly, I have no idea what it means to be a disciple. And I wasn't like, how dare you? I was like, that's amazing. We have so much to talk about. It'll take the rest of our lives, honestly, to talk about it. But I have a hard time believing that anybody in this room just wants to go to church for the rest of your life, to go to church for the rest of your life. This doesn't make any sense. What's the point? Why bother? There's so many other things you could pour your life into. If you were to buy a boat right now, you'd want to get better at being a boater, and you'd put time into it, right? If you join a sports team, hopefully you get better at the sport. You put practice into it, and you put time into it. But there's some reason in church we've taken that word believe, and we've gone, no, it's really like it's a thing you kind of attend. No, I'm on the team though. Nah, I just sit in the stands. No, but I'm a baseball player. Yeah, nobody really plays it anymore. Just watch the game. There's no game if we're not playing. He's gifted all of you specifically with your story, with how you'll tell the story of Jesus through your lens, so that you can meet the people that you'll know, and you'll tell it with your own passion. And so I pray that for today, maybe today's the first day you've gone, oh my gosh, it is a big deal. It's not just church. No, church is it's just a place to get together, be encouraged, learn a little bit, hopefully go, oh man, I need to leave some stuff here at the cross in the back, kneel down and pray about it, or take communion and remember what he did. That's all this is. Bless you. Time to worship together, hear other people singing, a time to not think, let God work on your heart and your soul. It's 5 or 10% of Christianity. The rest of it is how are you going to live a life learning more about who Jesus is, becoming more in relationship with him, and then being inspired to go, people need to know about this. I didn't even get into this, but the whole Olympic opening ceremony thing, take that and put it over this chapter. And I'm not getting political. I'm just saying I don't care what you believe or what they said. The French are known for their art. It wasn't even good art. And they can say that it wasn't about the Last Supper. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it was about one of the gods that's from Athens. And literally what he was about, what he's known for, was partying and ecstasy, not the pill back then, but that was why he was worshipped. That was an idol. So whether they meant it or not, they still wanted to lift up that guy for us, for all of our kids to watch that are just trying to watch the Olympics. That's the world we're living in right now. And it wasn't any different 2,000 years ago. We have access to a little more of it. So this morning, maybe there's a surrender. Maybe there's a miracle that you need in your life, and you're like, I don't even know if miracles are real. Try them. Because I know they're real. I see them all the time. They're big ones, they're little ones, they're ones that take my breath away. There's ones that go, yeah, I totally knew he'd do that, because he's able to do that type of stuff. It's what he does. He just does it when he wants to. And some of them he doesn't do because he doesn't want to. But maybe it's a miracle in your life. Maybe you just need healing, or you just need comfort, or whatever it is. There'll be some people in the back. If you need prayer, go to the cross. Communion, take communion. But it's just our time to go, man, that was a lot in that chapter. Am I feeling my way through life with direction or without direction? Are all these things I'm filling my time with? Yeah, they're little gods. Turns out they're all just little gods. Some of the same ones Paul would have walked around and actually seen in Athens. They're still alive today. They're no different. It's the same stuff. And then there's this category for unknown gods. Maybe you could go, hey, what are the unknown gods in my life? Because they had this place for unknown gods. And that was from this prophet 600 years ago who said, here's what we need to do. Here's what's going to save us from this plague. Let all the sheep go. Wherever they lay down near the temple of the such and such God, sacrifice those sheep to that God and those sheep to that God. And they were like, what about all the sheep that laid down nowhere? He was like, oh, those are, sacrifice those to the unknown gods. So for hundreds of years, they'd had shrines built to unknown gods. That's what Paul pointed out. You guys have more gods than men here. You've literally got a shrine to unknown gods, like you're pouring out your time and your energy and your finances and your heart and your belief, things you can't get back, to unknown gods. Wipe the slate clean, see one God, feel your way towards him through worship. Amen.